we will be recording this. Okay. Yeah, so thank you. We also wanted to make it clear that once we begin the session, I think there's only a few of us, but the mute policy will be in effect. That is that participants are required to mute unless you have questions. And please feel free to leave questions in the chat box. We will be monitoring that as well. And also, we are dedicating a Q&A session at the end of it. So if you have any questions that you can think of, if you're not willing to leave it during the chat, you can just keep it until the end. We'll be taking time for that. As here, we have with us a professional guidance counselor in terms of college advising. So please make the best of it. And also, we want to make this session as engaging as possible. So we ask everyone to participate and chime in when we ask of you. There's few of us, but so, and also I just wanted to ask that if you guys all could like turn on your cameras, unless you like, due to circumstances you can, because first of all, there's very small of us, a small number of us here, and we would really appreciate it. If I may speak in Tibetan for a minute. Nangi kunzula camera on la di when it good I on zu kind of the tamona mini new village when color top kyolani me register in boot of guest leader and the book nga tuma the limit down and so they came into your church in it that they drink so much in the case some mimena when cancel that can so the chis which camera turn on chitin which rest ya meet and going to minga madam da matus ni case to the can get shake to mind back into the law which roy and the camera turn on chituna kadiche. So yeah, with that, welcome everyone to the 5th episode of Sontsa Talks. First of all, I want to thank our guest speaker, Laura, for making this time for this very important session on writing the college essay. I think in general, writing a college essay is not an easy task, especially for us or 10 kids who lack the sufficient resources and the guidance. So therefore, I really hope that everyone will make the best. Therefore, I really hope this session will prove beneficial for everyone here and those listening in or watching this recorded. Second of all, we want to thank each and everyone gathered here, the participants, for showing your interest and support. So if I may, I'll do a small bit introduction of Laura. So Laura is currently a college advising counselor at the Key School. And if you know me, that is the school I attended along with TCB. And in addition, Laura is an experienced college admission counselor. So she has gone through the process of reading applications of an applicant and also advising them. So we have with us very experienced, and so therefore we're really grateful to have you here with us, Laura. Thank you. So I guess the next slide where I talk about my experience. Okay, so first I'll just begin with like my experience, and then Chonzom will go on with hers, and then we'll begin the session. So in terms of my college experience so far, I'm a first year at Brown University. And when the COVID hit, things really changed because usually we would start in the fall and go into the spring, but then Brown University moved our timeline from fall to spring to a spring to summer. But unfortunately, and also like fortunately, I was one among 15 other kids who were invited on campus because of documentation reasons. I had to be in an institution. And so within that, we were such a small cohort. We were only 15 kids. We got to know each other quite well. And since the semester kicked off, unlike the rest of my classmates who are only taking one course, we had to take a full load. So as the semester quickly kicked off, we really had to we didn't have too much time in terms of like socializing, but then I would say it's like during the lunch times, the dinner times, and then during the weekends when it actually like we got to like hang out and so on. I guess in terms of college experience, I would say like the pace that just getting into the college itself was very overwhelming at the beginning because, for example, my econ class, I guess you would finish a chapter per class. It's like, whoa, because like in terms of high school and prior to that, you would have like a week for one chapter. But in here, it's like one chapter per class. But anyhow, I finished it. The first semester is done and I passed. So in the photos I have here with us, some of my friends that we usually during the weekends, we would either watch movies together, play board games, or play video games together. In addition to like just hanging out, like partying, but not really. But and then here in the Christmas tree one, I think that's just on the Thanksgiving day. As a Friendsgiving thing, we like build a Christmas tree, welcoming Christmas holiday right in. So yeah, that's me. Chonzom la.
All right. So my name is Tenzin Chonzom, and I'm a first year at Stanford. So I guess my situation's a little bit unique. So I've actually been living in my own apartment, kind of next to my hometown. I'm not actually on campus. So I had to kind of get adjusted to living alone for my first quarter at Stanford. But in terms of academics, it was I'll just say that like transition was kind of rough, but we will prevail. Like um I mean, I ended up passing my classes, and it went well. During my free time, I just like to make drinks. I mean, some coffee and lattes, and then here's just a picture of my living room. I go to the park sometimes, have a picnic there, maybe read a book there as well. And then I'm not sure. There's a picture of like one of my coding assignments, and just a view from my window. So yeah, not much. Didn't do any socializing. But yeah, I think next we'll go to this slide.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you to Kalden and Tenzin for having me join you. I was privileged and honored to be Kalden's college advisor while he was here at the Key School. So I'm over here in Annapolis, Maryland, where he got to spend part of his high school experience, and was very lucky to get to know him and his story, his host family here in Annapolis. And honestly, the best part of my job is following my students when they graduate. So the fact that I get to see him helping all of you in your college process is really such a gift for me. So thank you, Kalden, for asking me to do this. So as he mentioned, I've done this kind of work longer than any of you have been alive. So maybe a little bit of experience, but like to say that I'm not that removed or that old. So I do understand your process and where you're coming from. But when I worked in the college admissions side, my job was to review applications. I worked for a small private liberal arts college in Pennsylvania called Dickinson. And then I got my master's degree at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And now obviously I'm working on the high school side and helping students work on their applications and helping them kind of paint their picture of who they are as students and how a college can get to understand and know who they are. And just kind of 3 quick points here to kind of give you the introduction to how important this is. I mean, obviously, you know that the decision to apply to college is one major decision, and then where you're going to apply is even equally important. And then at some point you get to decide where you're going, right? So once the schools say yes to you, then you have the tough decision of deciding where to go. So when you work on your application, remember the most important part of this is that people are reviewing your applications. And while that probably sounds kind of simple, I think that you need to remember that we on the admissions side are really advocating for you as students. And so when you share who you are in your application and you share your story, and you have many, many stories to share, and you're going to whittle down those stories to the most important parts of who you are. And then my job or their job in the admission office is to read and evaluate your application pretty quickly, unfortunately, but thoroughly, so that they can figure out who makes the best class for that school. So thinking about both where Kalden and Tenzin are attending, you know, 2 of the most challenging schools in our country to be admitted to. There's an art to this and there's a science to this, right? So your science, if you think of your application, is really your data. So your grades, your courses, your rigor, where you went to school, and the kind of environment that you have had your academic experience in so far. And then the other side is the art. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you write about who you are and how you share your story through your essays. Usually 2 or 3 people will read your application before it goes to what we call a committee. This doesn't necessarily apply to every school in the country. So if you're applying to some schools that tell you very specifically how they review your application, it's good to actually understand it and to even ask that question. But most colleges will have 2 people or maybe 3 initially review your application. So if I was to read Kalden's application and he was applying to Brown, if I was his primary reader, I'd spend about 3 to 5 minutes just reading his application for the first time. And then I would say, I really want Kalden to move forward in this process. So my second reader or my partner reader would read his application next for probably about the same amount of time. So at this point, he's got 10 minutes under his belt, right, from the college. And if those 2 people decide that he's ready to go to committee, so when you hear that phrase committee, that means that you are going to keep going in the process. So that means we haven't said no. We don't want Kalden at our school. We've said, yes, let's take another shot at talking about him. Then the committee meets usually towards the end of the admission process. So say, for instance, you apply regular decision in January to most of your schools, you'll hear back usually towards the end of March. So the committee happens after they've done their initial reads, and that would be in January and February. And then usually right around mid-February, around Valentine's Day, the committee starts. And that's a group of probably, depending upon the school, 6 to 8, maybe even 10 people. And I would be part of that advocating for Kalden, like I was his original reader. And then my job is to basically take him to the committee. And I use the word kind of like selling my students to the committee. That's probably not the right word to use, but you want to advocate, right? You want to position them and say, yes, you want this person at your school. And so when we say how much time we spend on a student's application, it really varies depending upon the school and how far you get in the process. So we'll talk more about that as we go, but that kind of gives you some of the behind the scenes understanding of how many people might see your application and really their role in trying to advocate for you and put you through to the committee process so that you continue to stay, a viable candidate for that particular school.
Sorry about that. So next we have just a quick inspirational video for kind of getting in the mood to write about essays or start thinking about topics for your personal essay.
They say inspiration is unreliable, that it's unstable, capricious, fickle. They'll tell you inspiration is hard to come by, that it's scarce, finite, fleeting. But you know a secret. Inspiration is everywhere. It's in your bowl of cereal. It's in the sound of the ball as it goes through the net. It's in the texture of your grandmother's hands. And it's in other places too. Inspiration is in that feeling in your gut when you got the letter. It's in the look on your father's face when you finally told him the truth. It's in the tears you cried when you realized she was gone. In silence. And somewhere in the midst of these random, crazy, perfect, beautiful details is you. In fact, when you think about it, what these details add up to is you. It's your life, your story. And there's only one person who can tell it. You. So what are you waiting for?
All right, and then to the next slide.
So just real quick about that kind of inspirational short video. If you are looking for additional resources, I know we're going to share these slides with you afterwards, and the college essay guy, so you saw him kind of in the little caricature there, his resources online are an excellent place for you to go if you're just looking for some extra help or insight, or want to just read a little bit more about the essay topic and the development of your essay. A lot of his stuff is free on the internet. If it's not, please feel free, and you'll get my email at the end to reach out to me, because I have access to a lot of his documents from workshops that I've been with him. So I'm totally happy to share those with you if you found that kind of hearing that might be a nice way to kind of toggle your writing and get you going. So real quick, we're not really going to have time today to actually do brainstorming exercises, and many of you may already have your topic well developed and even started writing. But just a quick reminder, as the three of us were planning this, is to think about the fact that you probably already have a story to share and to tell. And we're going to hear obviously from Kalden and Tenzin as they share their college essays. And if you're going to share and already know a little bit about what you want to say to a school, know that you don't have to start with the essay prompt in the comment or the Coalition app. You can start with your idea and make that idea match one of the prompts in one of those two applications. Or if you prefer to kind of look at a question first and then make sure that your topic fits it, you can do that as well. So it really can kind of come from either side. And then if you're like thinking in the middle of this, I really have no idea what I want to write about, that's perfectly normal. And there are two exercises here that you'll be able to click on later. It's something's called I Am, and then a values exercise, which is actually from the college essay guy. And you can take each of those, maybe 10 minutes to do each one to develop your ideas and maybe generate the topic that you want to write about. That's always a nice place to start if you feel like you don't automatically have something that you know you want to share. So the basic gist of this is that, you take time to think and brainstorm, and maybe that's by sitting and having a cup of tea. Maybe that's by taking a walk, right? Maybe that's by listening to music, but usually there's something that will kind of prompt you to think about what you want to share. And these things will help you do that. You can do the next slide. And again, this is just kind of resources for later as we set the scene to really talk about essays. These links will take you to a couple of resources that are really kind of big picture pieces. They're not just about essays, but they're really about the entire process of you finding your college and finding the right college for you. I always tell my students when I'm working with them, so Kalden could probably recite some of these things, that I always tell you to look at a school kind of in the context of the 5 Ps. So, what's the program like at your school? What kind of people do you want to be surrounded by, and where are they from? Where do you want to be geographically, in a city or in a town? Do you want it to be cold? Do you want it to be warm? What's the purpose and the meaning behind the school? Maybe the history of the school, why it was founded, how it's evolved and developed. And then obviously probably the most important part is to think about, well, how much is this going to cost me? So as you start to think about all of these things, and your essay is one piece of you finding your college and sharing your story, just know that these are some resources you can come back to later.
All right, and with that, we're just going to do a quick little poll just to see where everyone is, how far you guys are in the college application process. So let me, sorry, this is, oh, wait a minute. Okay, having some technical difficulties. Sorry about that. I'm not sure where it's. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, so if you can please take some time to fill this out, just so we can see where you guys are.
And you can select multiple answers if you have.
All right, we're almost done here. just got a few more people that are, or we could just end it now. Yeah, okay. I think we're pretty much done. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up and end the poll. And let me share the results with you guys. So it seems like most of you guys have worked on your resume, your essay, and the Common App, which is exactly where you guys should be. That's good. And then interviews and virtual tours, well, that's understandable because some of them haven't started yet. And yeah, so thank you guys for filling that out. That'll help us kind of gauge out what we're going to talk about more and emphasize. So let me stop that. Okay.
So that's good that you have all, or half of you at least, have at least said you started or thought about your essay. So in the chat, just using the chat as kind of our, although it's a small enough group, so you can use the chat, or if you are comfortable, just come off mute to say, but what do you think, and we'll just take 20 seconds to think about this. What do you think constitutes a strong essay? So what do you think if I was reading your college essay and I was your admission counselor at your school, what would I be looking for? What's most important as you try to tell who you are in your essay? And you can throw that into the chat or you can talk to us. I feel like I should play some kind of music so you can like da 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 da, like Jeopardy music or something for us to think about that. Anybody have any ideas? Okay, so we got identity.
Nice.
Good suggestion.
There isn't this like right answer, so just feel free to drop in what you think.
Being original, yeah, absolutely. That's one or two more.
And yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to elaborate on something.
Yeah, being yourself. Yeah, so this being original, being yourself, sharing your identity. Those are three excellent ideas and definitely spot on for what we would be looking for. Any others? And then we're gonna not really unveil, but we will share some of our kind of thoughts about how we would answer that question. All right, so identity, originality, and being yourself. I'm gonna make sure I jot those down too. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide and we'll kind of talk through a little bit of this. Okay, so there are so many answers to this question, right? And three of you gave three excellent points on what you think. Oh, another one just came in, what we want to contribute, right? So when you think about your essay, there is no one size fits all for a college, right? If you think of the hundreds or sometimes thousands, depending upon the size of the school, essays that a college counselor reads in a season, they're not looking for one topic. They're not looking for one common thread. They really are trying to figure out, like, again, what you said, your identity and who you are, right? And how you're going to bring who you are to the community where you're going to attend school. And I always talk about this to my students as you're kind of reading through like this list of what makes a great essay, that we're building a class, right? So think of it as like a puzzle. And it could be, however big your school is. So say there's 1,000 people in your freshman class. There are 1,000 pieces to that puzzle, right? And they don't want any one piece to feel exactly like another piece in that puzzle. So for an admission counselor, like when I was doing that work, our job is to build the puzzle and put it together so that everybody fits together, but is not exact, if that makes sense. So building that class and making that puzzle fit means that we do want to hear what your story is, right? What makes you original? What is your identity? So just like you guys were throwing into the chat, of course, they're the basic things, right? Like you want it to be grammatically correct. And so, talking to Kalden a little bit about his essay in a couple minutes, that's where we spent a lot of time, right? Was like, especially if you have a language barrier where you want to make sure you're really authentic in sharing your voice, but also being very clear and succinct and grammatically correct, right? So it is this kind of balancing act. But just know that authenticity and you sharing who you are so that your unique piece of that puzzle, stays on the table at the committee for as long as it can, right? So think about the longer that we talk about you in the admission process, the better your chances of being admitted. And so sharing that story is a big part of that. And you're going to hear more about that when they both share their essays. So go ahead. I don't know. How are we? We're 10:30. Should we want to keep moving, or do you just want me to quickly say what this is?
I mean, we could keep on moving. Well, just in general, this picture is just like a whole bunch of hooks. So like the first sentence in an introduction paragraph to your essay, and so kind of like what a hook is just to like the sentence to kind of lure your reader in to your essay. And so most of the time, people encourage your hook to be captivating. Like a couple of these, they make you kind of like raise your eyebrows and go, well, what can you tell me more, like what's going on? And so it makes you want to read it more. So these are just kind of some examples, and you could read this later if you want, but we're just going to move ahead. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my essay experience and then actually get into my essay. So earlier Laura had the slide about like how you came to your essay. So actually, in 11th grade, for my English assignment, we actually had to do a little bit of a draft of our Common App essay. So that's where I got like a really early start on my essay. But I actually kept the same topic from that time when I made it in 11th grade and actually used it in my actual Common application. So when I was writing this, I kind of already came to the topic at hand, and then I kind of picked the prompt that that fit it the best. So my essays about Buddhism and my interest in business and how that kind of collides, or there's a bit of confusion there. So I try to kind of resolve that through like an exploration of like both parts of my identity. So I'm gonna actually read my essay. So it was a cold morning in San Diego while my mother and I began reciting centuries-old Tibetan Buddhist mantras on our way to school. These prayers, filled with the intricate beauty of esoteric Tibetan words, carried thousands of years of history. I cluelessly repeated them, only in awe of their sound. However, the more prayers I learned, the more answers I sought. Wanting to learn more, I first looked to Buddhism's Four Noble Truths. One truth echoed through my mind. To stop suffering, one must stop desire. The world I knew quickly became temporary and materialistic. I was confused and frustrated because I thought my future aspirations contradicted my religious values. While most kids my age wanted to be doctors and lawyers, I strived to become an inventor. I marveled at their history-changing creations and wanted to follow in their footsteps through business. Eagerly dumping my blueprints into a flimsy plastic briefcase, I longed to solve the world's problem with them. From grammar-fixing pens to wooden storage boxes that held many things, I let my imagination run wild. After learning the Four Noble Truths, I felt a deep contradiction bubble within me. I believed I was a hypocrite. How can you be a creator of material things while attempting to lessen attachments? With my limited knowledge in Tibetan Buddhism, I knew that following my career path would inevitably bring me some suffering. My two identities collided violently. I tried to ignore the problem and went from entrepreneurship hackathons to business pitch competitions to more business workshops. At one pitch, I presented an educational software product to help both special education teachers and students. After I won second place, a teacher from the crowd came up to me to thank me. He told us that his wife was a special education teacher and that it meant a lot to him that I planned out a solution for the many problems these teachers and students faced. I felt a bit ashamed because I had not realized the lasting positive effects that my ideas could have on real people. It seemed simple to overlook, but experiencing that kind of gratitude up front opened my eyes to a solution for my own problems. I once attended a different panel of different professionals sharing their career stories. The students asked them about the specifics of their jobs and how they found their dream career. At the very last minute, I asked them the question, was the satisfaction from helping others the most important aspect of their job? From financial analyst to school counselor, they all briefly stared at each other in a moment of silence and then answered yes in unison. I found new meaning in business, entrepreneurship, and innovation, helping others and advancing society. With this empathy in mind, I connected the dots between my religion and career. Compassion and kindness for all sentient beings is a fundamental virtue in Tibetan Buddhism. What better way to adhere to this principle than helping others as a career? I've recognized that my answer to the question that everyone asks, what is the meaning of life, is helping others. My immediate interpretation of the Buddhist Noble Truth had led to my mistaking that Buddhism is nihilistic. Now I have come to adopt the 14th Dalai Lama's quote, "My religion is simple, my religion is kindness." There are many ways in which one can help others, but for me, it's through one Buddhist mantra and one innovative idea at a time. My spiritual and material interests can coexist together. I do not need to terminate one to preserve the other. I wish to help others and reduce suffering through every Buddhist teaching I learn and every idea I share from my plastic briefcase. All right, and so now what we're gonna do is kind of analyze some of the excerpts from my essay and see what worked and kind of how they played in. So the first excerpt that I chose here is the very introduction. And some things that stood out here is that like, my hook is like this first sentence, "It was a cold morning in San Diego while my mother and I began reciting the mantras on our way to school." So this already kind of paints a picture of like who I am, and it shares a bit of my identity already. And although it's not as captivating as some of the other hooks that start very like dramatic, I think that this paints an accurate picture of what my daily life is like. This happens every single day. And it's a part of me that sometimes that I don't, it's just a very average thing. And it kind of delves into like what is actually going on in my head. I think it's a good way to kind of lead into my inner thoughts. And so I thought that the introduction flows pretty okay. Each sentence kind of connects well with each other, building on. And what I try to focus on in my essay was showing, not telling. So I try to incorporate more details rather than just saying like, I'm this, I'm that, without any explanation. So there's a lot of unique details in here that you wouldn't really see in too many. I mean, it's not like you wouldn't immediately think of, I mean, every essay is personal, but this one's kind of just like, oh, Tibetan Buddhist mantras. Okay, I guess I'll learn a bit more about that in this one. So it's a little bit unique in that sense, but it's also part of my own identity. And then the last sentence kind of sets the tone for the rest of the essay, giving a clear picture of what I will be writing about. And it's kind of like a question. So throughout this essay, I ask a lot of my questions and kind of show a bit of my inner thoughts. So this is just kind of like an introduction to that confusion, or just like what's going on in my head, kind of like the introduction to the conflict.
I would say, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Kalden, you go first.
Go ahead.
Well, just, first of all, what a remarkable set of words, right? Just to have you read them and not even see them in front of us is part of the hook, frankly. It's not even one sentence. It's the fact that we could actually all sit here and listen to that and want to know more. So remember that you only have 550 to 650 words to write, but I wanted to know more. So part of it is actually hooking enough in your essay that your counselor, maybe during an interview, right? Or maybe even when you get to campus, will say, wow, I'd really like to connect back with that student and learn more about who they are. That's like the ultimate, right? When you're writing an essay. But I just think real quick and just, I mean, I think your critique is spot on. But that first paragraph itself made me want to read more. And your goal is to make sure that those counselors want to keep reading and want more afterwards, but definitely to finish the essay. So be careful about the fact that you want to, and I see this all the time, that students write one long essay without ever separating it into paragraphs, that you want chunks, right? To give them chunks. And as she read them, I could almost hear where she broke to another paragraph. And almost in this first one's a good example of the first sentence wanted me to read more, but then that last sentence of that first paragraph said, okay, she's not going to just tell me about her cultural background and her heritage and her identity, but what she wants to do based on who she is, right? So going forward, how is that going to carry her? So, I mean, phenomenal.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the idea that digging deep, like just not on the surface, like I think Tenzin does it really well, where she selects the topic, first begins with like Buddhist, the idea, and then goes deeper and digs into her actual like other identity, being this like in a career aspiration and how that conflict. And I think that's really good. Like just you want, I guess like like the unexpected. You want the reader to hear the unexpected instead of what they would expect. Like say, just keep on going with this Buddhist identity and so on. Wouldn't really, I guess, like it is compelling, but at the same time, if you show something unexpected, it's more of a hook, I guess. So that was really good too. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And now we'll go on to the other excerpts. So the next excerpt, while most kids wanted to be my, so yeah, this is the second paragraph, I think, to my essay. And I think, let me move here. Okay. So one thing that was a bit cliche in here is that like, oh, while most kids my age wanted to be doctors and lawyers, I started to become an inventor. So it's a little bit risky to kind of put that in there because it's kind of going off like, oh, I'm different, or like, oh yeah, I wasn't like other kids. But I kind of like backed it up with a bit of my actual like showing. So I talk about like my actual interest in it, why I'm interested in this, and I actually show examples of like some things that I did very early on when I was a kid that kind of show my excitement. So this last sentence, like from grammar fixing pens to wooden storage boxes that held many things, I let my imagination run wild. And so this is kind of showing like actual, like these are things that I actually did. So like, so it's not just like empty words with nothing else behind them. This is something that I try to like, my little blueprints are something that are reoccurring. And that's what I also use again in the conclusion to kind of circle it back to like this little part of me when I was younger, to how like this still inspires me up to today. So yeah, details help show the creativity and ambition instead of plainly telling. And then I'm just gonna quickly skip to the last part. This is the conclusion. And I think one thing that I said already is that I use like a full circle method where things that I introduced in the beginning, I restated in the end, just so that I emphasize this and so that people remember, like if there's anything, if you're reading this in 3 minutes and there's a lot of like things that don't stick with you, at least these things will be like emphasized again, and then hopefully they stick with you. It's the fact that like the Buddhist mantra was in the beginning, and how that also plays into like my little blueprints, or like my plastic briefcase where I kept those blueprints. And then, yeah, and kind of like the general structure of my essay was that I posed a question in the beginning, explored it in the body, kind of like my thoughts and confusions, but also in the body, I was able to back it up with like actual experiences. Like I talked about my pitch, my business pitch, as well as like just experiences in like the career and exploring it. And then I answered it with sort of in the conclusion with kind of these quotes and like a real understanding of like what I want to do.
Remember when counselors are reading your applications, they're usually reading them electronically. Very few schools actually have hard copies or print anything out anymore. So this whole notion that both Kalden and Tenzin are going to do of the highlighting really actually happens in the review process. So if I was the first reader and I was going to send it on to my colleague, I would actually pull out some of these sentences that really stuck with me, because I'm the one person who's probably going to read the entire essay in totality. My next reader is probably going to skim for the things that I pulled out. And so the fact that Tenzin is saying, okay, not just in the first paragraph, but throughout, here are a couple of messages that I really want that reader to understand and know about me. And the fact that she gave a very concrete example of how business can actually be kindness, and how business can actually be soft, right? It doesn't have to be this hard line. That just being a doctor and helping people, she can still help people in another profession. And that kind of revelation that she made is probably something that counselor, when they read it, is going to say, okay, not only do we get this background of hers, but we also get the fact that she's actually already starting to figure out who she is and where she's going through that example that she shared. So those are things that, as she highlighted them, that reader is going to pick up on those things and make it easier for the next person in that third reader to quickly just solidify, yeah, we want to keep talking to her and learning more about her.
All right, and then next we will go to Kalden's essay.
Okay, thank you. That was really good. So in terms of my experience, similar to somewhat to Chonzom's, I started mine just after finishing 11th grade during the summer. Laura hosted this, she does it every year, right? This year, I guess virtual, but a 2-week long, I think, a workshop, which covered a lot of subjects like doing your resume, preparing for interviews, brainstorming an essay, and then actually drafting an essay. So that's when it began. And so for me, I knew, at least someone knew, like, going into that essay, I wanted to focus my essay on like my Tibetan identity, but at the same time that was very broad, and I was like, okay, where should I go with this? And some things that helped me along the way was like consulting Laura for sure. And then there were some activities that we will be sharing with you guys that help narrow down what I wanted to cover with my topic. And for you, I think that'll be really helpful. In addition, like reading other sample essays was really helpful too. So initially I began my essay, like I wanted to, during the summer workshop, I was like, my essay focused on this particular instance where I was at this immigration office, like if you're leaving Delhi to abroad, you have to go through the immigration office, and my experience of it, how it was very nerve-wracking because everybody else was like going swiftly, one by one. I was like held back, and like it was very and so I was trying to cover that, and then go about what it has taught me, and then the other things cover along it. But then I realized that I wanted to cover more than that. I wanted to give a broader scope of my story. So the fall of that, I switched to I think again consulting with Laura to this essay where it's more of I don't know, montage, but it's it covers a lot of things within it that tells my story as a whole. So that's what I have. So I'll read the essay. I was only 4, yet my survival depended on me hiding from the Chinese border patrol. A hasty goodbye to my family, and a prayer for a safe journey were all I took with me. I rode on the back of a yak, my tiny arms wrapped tightly around my uncle as we traveled across the harsh terrain of the Himalayan mountains into exile. We were fortunate as our journey was relatively free from howling winds and snowstorms, and on the 12th day, we reached Nepal. To my disbelief, I woke up the following morning to find my uncle gone. My memories of childhood gradually faded as I realized home was far away. I wondered if I would ever see my family again. In exile, I was welcomed to the Tibetan Children's Village School's family, where everyone shared a similar story. They also fled from their home into exile in India and Nepal. It was only then I began to understand that my parents had selflessly sent me into exile to give me a better future. To my dismay, I also learned that I might not ever see them again. This pivotal experience motivated me to make the most of the opportunities in my life, but I've often struggled with how to do so. I was simply part of the herd, going wherever I was asked, without any sense of direction for myself. Those feelings of uncertainty continued until I met my American sponsors, who arranged me to attend an American school while also attending the Tibetan school. The new opportunity in the United States took me from a small world of my Tibetan school to an open environment, a liberal and open environment. When I returned to school in India after being in the United States, I was dumbfounded to discover that I had partially forgotten my Tibetan language. This rather embarrassing moment boosted my interest in studying Tibetan culture and values. As the only Tibetan at the Key School in Maryland, I did not shy away from embracing my Tibetan values while learning American values. Since I was 8, I've traveled back and forth between India and America many times. Despite the long hours seated in an uncomfortable seat, traveling quickly became something I enjoy. During my travel, labels such as stateless forced me to jump through challenging hoops that an ordinary traveler would not experience. I realized that Tibetan endured trauma resulting from the suppression by the Chinese authority in Tibet, and also from Tibetan's stateless status while in exile. These experiences gave me the sense of direction I sought. I want to participate in reuniting the Tibetan community and forging a stronger relationship with the international community. Thus, I hold conversations about the situation in Tibet with each person I meet, and hearing their voices has always been a fuel for my aspirations. I spent 2 consecutive summers in India interning at the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy. I was deeply disappointed by the direst human rights conditions imposed by the Chinese. I slowly came to realization that none of these was foreign to me. Rather, it had always been present in the background wherever I went. This has never been so clear as it has been on the rare occasions that I'm able to talk with my family. While on the course, I can speak only in general terms. I do this out of fear what horrible things could happen to my family because of me. Having fled from such hostile conditions and to be haunted by it, I learned the true values of justice and the importance of enhancing and protecting the civil rights and liberties enjoyed by the Western democracies. It galvanized my desire to bring about change and use our partnership with the United States as a motor and a beacon of hope. So that was my essay. So the excerpt that I chose one of them was my introduction. And again, as we talked about it earlier, the hook, I think it's very important to grab the reader's attention. And I think I do that because partly, as you can see, it's like an element of a good story is it's like one of them is like details and imagery. And I think I do that providing like my story of this, like I has to goodbye with my family. And it's like very vivid. You can like see it as the reader. And in addition to that, also like the first sentence, like I was only 4 years old, yet my survival depended on me hiding from the Chinese border patrol. I think that's like very captivating because you wouldn't think of a kid who's 4 years old, like thinking about survival. And that just grabs the reader's attention. And then going forth within it, I think like it also like the things I present in there help the reader like place themselves within like reading this thing, like they feel the worry that I was feeling at that time. And also like questioning myself because like I was so young and my memories of Tibet quickly faded, and then asking if I will ever see my family again. So that was my introduction. And then I think again, this sets a tone for the rest of the essay because it not only talks about how I physically was like lost in terms of like being displaced from my home in Tibet into exile, but also like without a sense of direction for myself. And I think that reflects in the next sentence that I have there. I was simply part of the herd of going wherever I asked without any sense of direction for myself. And then I think that clearly states the conflict that I had going in, which I'll address in the rest of the body paragraph. And yeah, so that's that.
And Kalden, I would say, I mean, obviously I remember this so vividly, and I think a couple points. One is that if you notice in his essay, I'm pretty sure that you never use the word, tenacity or determination or strength. But those are all words that if I were reading his application, I could highlight things in here like he's doing, but I could also say, well, my assumption is based on what he's sharing with us, these are the descriptors that I would use to say, these might be great things for us to see on our campus. How will he display those things and those characteristics later? So remember, part of you sharing a story that's especially for his very long ago, you can also kind of, find in that story the qualities of a student and a person that are still being displayed even as an 18 to 22-year-old when you're in college, right? So sometimes it's scary to write a story that did start so long ago because you're trying to figure out, well, is it current enough? But he did a great job of threading not just what happened to him to get to India, but also how he then has given back to that community, right back to the school, how he's made the transition to America, how he's appreciating kind of being from different places now. So all of those things were tied into something that's pretty short. And I do remember that Kalden's probably started out, and I don't remember how many, but it was like probably 1,000 or more words. It was probably double what it is now. And remember, some of you might be sharing a story that is so long because to tell all of it in its entirety would take many, many more words. But then it's how do you parse that and piece that together so that it can be succinct, right? So he probably pulled out many details to get to this point. So it's okay to kind of throw everything out there and then pull it back to get to that number of words eventually. It does take longer, but it's okay to start big and come back to the bulk of that 550 or so words.
Mm-hmm.
Go on, sorry.
Right, yeah. So I also agree that like the beginning of this is very captivating, and just starting from sometimes it's a bit tricky to kind of figure out like an essay that starts from very early on and bring that back to your present self. But I think that the ending of this, the introduction, it makes the reader kind of want to understand, like, how did you get to today? How did you fix this problem? And it's very captivating in that sense as well. And I think you did a great job of using like your experiences and your reflections on them to actually show like your values and your traits and everything about you that makes like you who you are, and kind of explains what you want to do in the future as well, and just why you do what you do without telling it straight up. Yeah.
Thank you. So the next slide, I will like try to quickly go on with it because I think Laura and Tenzin did a very good job of like critiquing the whole as a whole. And I'll go quickly because we're quite running short on time. I think like it's already. So yeah, in this part, I guess this is my body paragraph right after. This comes right after like when I talk about this part where the challenges I had to go through as a stateless. And I think this is a very good observation because like not only I'm like stating the fact that Tibetans are in Tibet are struggling within the Chinese regime, but also like in fact I've also experienced being a stateless, how this trauma has haunted me. And so that's that. And also like I guess it does reflect the values that I show in terms of like being observant, dedicated, driven, and also like now compared to the before where I say I'm pretty much lost, here I've like found a sense of direction for myself, what I wanted to do in the future. And right after that, again, it is reflected where I talk about how I volunteered at the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy, which backs up what I like want to do in the future and helps out. In addition that, yeah, that. And then the last one is my concluding paragraph. So in this one, again, it like, I guess somewhat does a full circle, but not really. Like when you talk about having fled from such hostile conditions, like it goes back to like being at 4 years old, survival, talking about that. But as a whole, I think again, it paints a very vivid picture of like the urgency because I talk about like, for me, having fled from such a hostile conditions, now it's compelled me to actually pursue a career or like an aspiration where I want to help my community in terms of like, yeah, the dedication. And yeah, I think I've wrote pretty much in the bullet points, but due to time, I won't speak too much on it. Yeah.
Also, so if you want to just look back on this, since we're also like we're short on time, if you want to look back on these, we have an example of like a good essay and a bad essay excerpts, and these kind of help with like they give you another type of essay. Like this essay, for example, was written by someone who got into like all 8 Ivy League schools, and this essay is very famous, but it also kind of ties in like sort of relatable with like an immigrant experience and also like their experience with the English language. So I think it's a very, we also linked it in here if you want to read that later, but here are some highlights of this essay. And we also talk about what works in this essay. So please take a look at that if you have some time when we send this essay. And then should we go through this?
So if we go through this, then we don't go through the next like bad essay. So I guess that works. Or if it's 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's not too long.
It's hard to write that essay, it really is, because it's a page or a page and a half. And you know, the 3 most common topics, or at least the three topics that are really important to high school students, or perhaps that have impacted their lives in the most profound way, would be the death of a loved one or friend, moving, or divorce. And those are pretty heavy-duty topics. And there have been outstanding authors over the years who have tried to approach those topics and have had a difficult time in a 500-page book. And now we're asking a 17-year-old to reflect on that in 750 words or less. So it's a great challenge, so be careful.
I think that if you don't feel that you can trust the admissions officer to safeguard your secrets or to see you in a vulnerable light, you're going to miss an opportunity for the admissions officer to get to know you as well as he or she possibly could. One of the biggest mistakes that students make on their application essays is to sort of make an embellished resume. So we've already seen your resume, we've already seen, you know, what you've done, what you're interested in. Don't use the very few words you have to tell us about yourself, only to talk about what you do. I think the essay is sometimes thought of as a way to show yourself off. And in reality, what it is for us is a way to understand why you do the things you do, how those things impact you, how those experiences have shaped your worldview.
One of my pet peeves when I read admissions essays is when students describe an event without explaining the significance of it. And so if you tell me, for example, about a snowstorm, okay, sure. But what does that tell me about you? Last year, I read an essay about a student, or that a student wrote about his grandfather, and it was very well written, lots of wonderful imagery and good punctuation and grammar. But by the end of the essay, I wanted to admit the student's grandfather because it was all about him. And so I didn't learn anything about the student in that essay. And so in that case, although it was a great essay, it was not great for this purpose.
Students who are creative will sometimes think that they should have a more visually appealing essay. And so they'll create their essay to be in the shape of something that represents who they are. You know, it can be hard to read an essay that's shaped like a chalice, let's say. I've also seen students take the approach of a letter to a roommate or their presidential acceptance speech that they're going to give down the road, thanking Georgetown for the opportunity. And I think sometimes the ploy can take over the essay and you can't get past sort of the tool that they've used and you don't actually get to the student. So I think it's better to write a simple, heartfelt essay than to try to put too much time into crafting something that you think will stand out or catch our attention.
I kind of understand where students are coming from when they say, oh, let me mention all of these different things, but I try to encourage students to sort of hone in maybe on one experience, on one extracurricular, and use that as a lens through which we can get to see the way that you think, the way that your world operates, and also who you might be on our campus.
So those were some very good words from college admissions officers. And please also check out.
It's hard to write that.
My bad. We also have like the bad essay examples. So these kind of, yeah, so take a look at that if you have some time. And here are some extra resources that Laura has put together of other essay examples and samples that are very good just to read through and kind of get a sense if you want to like, yeah, it's just good to look through other essays as well.
Yeah, I couldn't emphasize enough that if you're stuck or you feel like you got something written, but you're not sure where you're going to go, just reading other essays really helps contextualize for you. What do you need to be doing? Not what topic or how to say something, but just reading the essence of other essays will help you feel like you can kind of get into that groove of writing the right thing and the right volume too, right? So whittling things down and really being very specific about the message you're trying to convey. So once you start to see other ones where it pops up and you know really easily, just like in reading both of these today, it was very clear and very evident what their messages were and the kind of 3 takeaways that each of them were trying to convey. So the more you read, the more it'll make it easier for you to do the same thing.
And do we want to go through the essay tips?
Yeah, I feel like we probably kind of already did through you guys sharing your examples, but yeah, I think definitely find one person, maybe not 10, because 10 people will then rewrite your essay for you. Then it becomes somebody else's essay, but find one really good mentor or teacher or friend, a strong writer, someone that you know can give you really authentic and critiqued feedback. We talked a lot about proofreading, just talking about Kalden, since I knew his from the beginning to the end, that it's okay to start big and kind of pull things back, but that proofreading is so essential, especially if English is not your first language. And look, no one's looking for it to be perfect if it's not, but just being as fully capable and displaying that as you can would be really important. Give yourself time. So if you're trying to get to January 1st, although many January 1st deadlines have been pushed back because of the pandemic. So sometime in January, you'll probably be submitting most of your applications, and give yourself a little bit of time each day to work on this. Don't try to write your essay like in one sitting, right? Give yourself the time and the space to breathe between it, because as you think about it, while you're having lunch or taking, laying down, watching a show on Netflix, you'll be amazed by how much it kind of takes over your brain, and just give yourself that time. And then obviously we talked a bit about the brainstorming exercises that you can go back to, because I do think that if you're really stuck, it's good to go back and start at that beginning to ask yourself those questions.
All right. And then we're going to skip this, but this is also a video talking about the other type of essays. So what we were kind of emphasizing earlier on, our essays were actually like the Common App personal statements, just like the main essay that every college reads. But this one talks a bit more about the specific college, like why this school essay that a lot of colleges ask, or similar type of question. So it's also very helpful because you'll probably have to write this type of essay as well. Albeit it's not as, I don't think it's as difficult as the actual personal statement. Oh, let me just, okay. And I think we're gonna skip this poll for the sake of time and go straight to the Q&A. But here are some other extra resources that we've put together, that is on the slide that Laura has graciously put together. And here is her email. And also, I think most of you guys know like the Sontsa Gmail. So if you need any extra help, don't be afraid to reach out. And we could review your essays or help you with that as well. And then thank you so much for sitting through this whole workshop and being here with us today. And then
we have a question in the chat already. Do we want to take that one first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we can do that. And Yafet, do you want to speak like unmute yourself and ask the question, or you just want to leave that as in the chat?
Okay, I can do that. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I would just like to ask the question that can you edit your personal essay after submitting one-to-one college?
Yeah, either of you want to answer that first?
Yeah, sure. So once you submit your like personal essay to the college, that's what they get. So like if you already submitted it, I don't think you can, you can't change that afterwards. But like through the Common App, if you submit your personal essay to one college like that, and then you edit it later, you can submit the edited one to your other schools. So the school that you submitted it to gets like the older version, but the one that you like all the other schools that you apply after that, after you've edited, they get the newer version. So yeah.
And I'm not sure about this, but if Laura can confirm it, but like if you make this huge terrible thing, then I guess you could email like them possibly, like say I really like, I don't know, but yeah, something along that. Is that like if you make like a terrible mistake and
right, that's happened to me once in the last couple of years actually. And yes, if that happens, so either you can reach out to your counselor and at the school. So each school has an admission counselor that's assigned either as an international counselor or the school for the students in the Mid-Atlantic or from California. So everybody's a geographic counselor, and you can usually find that on the school's website, and you could always email that person and just say, look, I had this big issue, and they can replace it for you. And if you can't find out who that person is, then go to someone at your school that's helping you with your application. So if that's a school counselor or a teacher, somebody who can advocate for you, and they can help find that person. So like if that were Kalden, for instance, he could come to me and say, I can't find Brown's counselor on their website. And I'd say, don't worry, I'll help you do that, right? So you have kind of two avenues you can come at it from. But good question.
Any other questions? China kuna data tana de kugab de ba.
We must have covered most things.
I think we're good then.
I mean, I would just say one last piece of advice for all of you, just knowing that I've been on both sides of the desk, right? In the sense of counseling students in high school. So just what you're going through and looking at colleges, and then obviously sitting on the side to read applications, that this really is an opportunity for you to learn so much about yourself, right? The evolution that you go through in applying to college really helps you solidify who you are going into your adult life, right? As you take off and go to college. So know that there is a lot of evaluation that happens of you in this process, right? And certainly a lot of judgment about your application and whether or not you're admitted or not admitted to a certain school. But honestly, more importantly, even than that, is just who you become as a self-reflection exercise in applying to college. So take this time to kind of really get to know who you are and where you want to be. And all these questions that they're asking you in the application can help you do that. So know that there's far more value to it. And while you will end up where you should end up from a college perspective, you'll also be that much more grounded in who you are as a person. So good luck, and please reach out. I'm happy to help you.
Yeah. So with this, we've come to the end of our session today. But before we come to a close, I want to thank Laura. We want to thank Laura from the bottom of our heart for being here and making time for us, even with your busy schedules. For your information for the participants, Laura is doesn't really finish the process each year, because right now, as the current 12th graders are done with the college application process, the 11th graders start their process. So it's a continuous process for Laura, and we want to thank you for making the time for us here. And in addition, as we have mentioned earlier, we want to thank Laura for the college materials, the resources for writing a college essay and so on, making it available for us. And we will follow up with everyone here with an email with the links and as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And we also ask of you that you do not share it out with other people outside of the circle, because it is a school property and we're making it available only to you guys. So yeah, that's it. And feel free to reach out to us if you all have any other further questions.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
Kunga asks, if your vocabulary is not very good and essay is simple with a good story, does it make any difference? I think so. One of the essays that we were the good essay example, it was very simple to read and it was very accessible language. It doesn't have any very big vocabulary, but it's still very effective. And I think sometimes that's a plus, because when you have an essay that's sometimes very tricky to read because of such high level words, not everyone, sometimes it kind of takes away from your own personality. I just think that if you have a good story, then the type of the vocabulary shouldn't make a difference. The effect should still be the same. And but yeah, I think it's okay.
Yeah, and don't feel like you have to write every single word of the essay. Like if it says 550 to 650 total words, you don't have to fill that. You could do it in 450 if you feel like it's simple and hits the point. That's completely fine. I mean, you can't make it 25 words, right? But you could do a few hundred words. So don't feel like you're hitting a target as much as just telling the story. And if you're succinct, it's okay. If you feel like that's a better way for you to display your story, and if you feel like you want to be careful more about that vocabulary piece.
Yeah, and with that, with what Kalden said, make sure that you guys attend this live, because if you're watching this on a recorded session, I'm not sure if we can we won't get your email, and we won't get to send out all the resources. So make sure you come next time live.
Yeah, that's it. So thank you, everybody.
Good luck.